Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kentucky Small Business Development Center's weekly webinar. We're glad you're here as always. As we allow attendees a few moments to join our event, we'd like to share some information about the Kentucky SBDC as always. So for 40 years, actually we're celebrating 40 years this year. For 40 years, the Kentucky SBDC has assisted emerging and growing businesses by providing the professional expertise, tools, and information necessary to make sound business decisions. We do this at no cost to you, thanks to the U.S. Small Business Administration, who co-sponsors our program. The program has been administered by the University of Kentucky in partnership with additional colleges and universities and local economic development agencies. We're part of a national network, America's SBDC, which has over 1,000 centers across the nation. To learn more, visit us at kybizhelp.com, and there you'll find additional resources to help start, fund, and grow your business. As always, we'll make a recording of today's event available to you later this afternoon. So if you need to step away or if you're having any technical issues, you'll have access to the entire recording. If you look to the right of your screen, you'll find the chat feature. And there, if you have any questions for our presenter, you can post them here and we'll answer them at the end of the presentation. In addition, since we're focusing on cybersecurity today, you're going to find a downloadable cybersecurity toolkit there in the chat. So you'll look for that and download that. You'll have that to look at anytime you like. I'm Janet Flom with the Global Center, which is one of 17 centers throughout the Commonwealth. And with me today are my colleagues from Louisville, Dave Etkin and Tony Sears. So good afternoon.
Hey, Janet. Hey, Tony.
Hi, Janet. Hey, Dave. Guess what, you all? Pradeep Gupta, second week in a row, they're #1 in the chat.
There you go. There you go.
So welcome, everybody. Again, my name is Dave Etkin. I'm here, the director here in Louisville, the Louisville office, and got a great guest today. All of October, we've been talking about cybersecurity for your business, and it is a very important thing that you need to look at your business. When I do spend a lot of time, working with companies to mitigate risk in their business, and security of their IT structure is one of the biggest things we look at. But we need to have great partners in technology to get that done. So Dean Lause is a great resource. He's a technologist to the highest degree. He is a chief technical officer for Argentum IT. He's about 20, 30 years of experience with numerous Fortune 500 companies. He'll tell you a little bit more about himself. But what I do like about Dean is he lives the tech dream, because he has a total tech-enabled home where all he has to do is say good night and everything turns off. All the lights are off, the doors lock, and the TV turns off, and he's ready to go. So that's quite the setup. So, Dean, I'm glad you're here today, and I hope that we'll.
Hopefully, I won't scare anybody too much, or. But yes, I do have a tech-enabled home. I can say good morning, good evening, good night, whole 9 yards, and I don't have to worry about doing much, which, some people that scares, but at the same time, I control most of it, so it's not like it's cloud-based or anything else. So
I'm surprised that you don't use, the classic computer and then your command.
Yep. So it's a combination of both. So, I appreciate it, Dave. A little bit about my experience. I've been dealing with enterprise level companies for the last 30 years. I've actually moved into the SME space, working for a managed services provider. I've done consulting for all sorts of organizations such as Lause, PPL, Centerpoint Energy down in Houston, and various other organizations to help, shore up stuff, right-size things, become budget conscious, etc. So I managed security for the last operations that I was at for the better part of 11 years across North America. And, I'm not going to get too much in it. All this is in my background in the slide handout. So I'm just going to let you guys, take on what you want. And I just can tell you that I do have a little bit of experience in security, and some of the things that I've seen would probably scare a few people, but I'm not here to scare anybody, and we're just going to kind of move on. So password security. does your company's policy pass muster? That's always a big question, and I will tell you as I get a little bit further in, 81% of the hacking-related breaches are used, from either stolen or weak passwords. And then I'll get into a slide here in a little bit, but one of the strongest things you can do, passwords are still a common thread throughout our industry and security when it comes to IT. And any systems you use, banks, credit cards, they've all got passwords. Now, here's the bigger problem. 73% of us duplicate that same password throughout your work environment and your personal work, your personal life. Those are things that I will tell you, you need to change the practice because it's not good. Somebody gets your information, it's stolen, it does appear on the dark web, and I will show you where some of this comes in a little bit later. And nearly half of all of our employees don't like changing their passwords, and if they do change their passwords, they just add a digit or change a character to their password when updating your passwords. Even companies that force their password resets every 90 days. Microsoft has announced they've done away with password changes. The reason being is it allows you to use a more complex password that you can memorize and not have to change. And it is something that has been proven that actually increases security if you use a longer password, a combination of words and things that are unique to, stuff you like to do, like read books and things like that. So do yourself a favor and basically come up with a unique password that only you can understand. The longer, the better, because I'm going to show you a chart with the time that it takes to hack a password. So a little bit of stats. 99% of all hacked email accounts do not have multi-factor authentication enabled. What is multi-factor authentication? It is the addition of a secondary, secondary password code, whatever you would like to say. It is your normal password plus either a text message, an app, a multi-factor application app, like if you've got Office 365, there's Microsoft Authenticator. It's free. Use it. Out of businesses and lost money due to hacked emails, last year alone, there's 1.3 billion in losses on average per year due to email compromises. There's nobody that's too big. There's nobody that's too small. All it takes is one time. I had a client that basically wired out $50,000 because of a phishing email. They didn't understand. They were told not to question things and just do it. So, email compromise is something that's a daily occurrence. You stand at 1 in 4 chance of roughly every 39 seconds of suffering a cyber attack, phishing attack, whatever the case it may be. So those are just some plain and simple stats. If you don't, I've left the links in here so you can go look them up yourselves. It's real. The average person has 38 passwords. I don't know how you manage those passwords, but there are a lot of tools out there today. A lot of them are free. Some are paid. Corporations are now actually helping with some of that by deploying their own internal, password management tools that you don't have to remember them. Plus, they also help generate random passwords for both your personal and work accounts. We, as a service provider for our clients, actually provide this as a free service, just because, one, it helps us from a security aspect know that customers do not have passwords written down. They've got one place to store them, and it's secured. So as of a few months ago, the last stat I saw was that there's over 300 billion passwords worldwide. This is where it becomes a little interesting for everybody. Along the left-hand side is the number of characters in your password. What does it contain? Numbers only. If you've got an 8-digit numbers only password, it can pretty much be hacked instantaneously. You start moving out to upper lowercase and addition letters, it takes about 13 minutes. upper and lowercase, mixed, characters, 5. And as you can see, even if you have a mix of upper lower symbols, an 8-character password is in theory crackable in about 57 days. And I will tell you, those numbers are decreasing on a daily basis because of dictionary attacks and the release of information on the dark web, because it's easier to run a dictionary attack, which is based on known passwords, against websites and whatnot. So the more complex your password, and keeping them separate will highly, reduce your chance of having your passwords and identity stolen considerably. So if you've got the time and patience, take it out and make an 18-character password with upper and lowercase and symbols and save it. And there you've got probably the best option you have. I can't tell you that if you come back in another 2 years what this is going to look like, but it's going to be significantly less, that I will guarantee. The demise of passwords. Passwords in your business are not enough. They really are not. It's a combination of passwords, biometrics, adoption of Windows Hello for Business, fingerprint, face recognition, something beyond just a single password to validate that the person that's entering it is legit. Those are some of the things that you can actually implement. The Windows for Hello for Business is basically built in. You just have to have an enterprise version of Windows, which most people can get depending on the version of Office and 365 and stuff. HIT badges, or human interface devices, allow you to badge into a device that eliminates the requirements for passwords, and the machines can be locked down to only accept those types of devices for access. Now, if you lose that, there does need to be policies around, promptly reporting it, etc., because anybody with that device, the badge, key fob, whatever you want to call it, can log in as you and potentially do destructive things. TINs, which most people are used to on their phones, custom swipes, numbers, and pattern unlocks, they are probably, in my opinion, one of the weaker options, but they still go beyond just a standard password, which most people have been using. So it's one of those things where the pins on the phones, custom swipes, pattern unlocks, it's an additional level, because typically phones anymore also require you to enter your PIN in addition to the swipe after a period of time. So, now, a little bit about the dark web, and this is where things start to become a little cold, as I say it, and it is a cold, cruel world outside of your window. The deep web, which is the portion of the internet that most people hear about, that don't hear about, is hidden from traditional search engines. Google, nobody indexes the deep web. It's areas of the web that basically have no ability to be indexed because it's firewalled off. It includes financial, educational, business institutions, databases, etc. It is, and a lot of times, exposed, but just not in ways that you can get to it, unless you've been experienced with doing such things. The dark web is another that is intentionally hidden from search engines. They use masked IPs. They bounce stuff all over the world and use specially designed web browsers. Tor is one example, one part of the deep web. And this is actually government sanctioned by the U.S. and stuff, because it's one of the ways that a lot of foreign intelligence information is potentially passed around, and the fact that it allows anonymity, where having it sent directly to an individual is something that they don't want, because they don't want the traceability. So it is one of those things that it's there for a reason, but it's also a very illicit place. Here is some of the stats on what your information is worth. If you've ever lost a credit card, somebody's stolen your identity, I can literally go out and pick up, and I can literally do this. I don't do it. I can tell you that I've participated in some of it and researched it, but you can go out and pick up MasterCards, credit cards. If you want a couple hundred credit cards with PINs and PII, it's easy to go find. PII is personal information that allows you to basically have somebody else's identity. A clone MasterCard with a PIN, $15. You want a whole stack of them, hey, not a problem. You can usually buy them in a lot of 100, and you get a discount on it. The reason this stuff is so prevalent is because the cost of doing this and gathering all this information is relatively inexpensive. It's a few hours worth of work, and in most cases, the reward is almost 1,000 times what the effort and the amount of money that you put into it. So that's the allure to the criminals, hackers, whatever you would like to say, in that regard. So I'm not going to get into all this. The numbers will speak for themselves. If there's questions on this slide, we can kind of address it. But, social media accounts, forged documents, as you can see. If I get your credit card and I need your driver's license, passport, it's not that expensive to get. So the U.S. government created the dark web as a place to freely exchange information anonymously among various states and agents, and that's not necessarily the U.S. states. That's other states, government agencies around the world. It's still used for the purpose as well as other legal activities. However, guns, weapons, drugs, and most of the traded purchased items are, done in deals underneath all of this stuff. As I mentioned, personal data on the dark web is usually cheap. You can buy complete identities, and most of it would pass muster if you were going through customs and stuff like that. So if you decide you want to leave the country, not too hard to find. So one of the things about the dark web is that you can browse anonymously, and the Tor browser will allow you to bounce around from server to server around the world. It allows for people in countries that are hostile to free speech to communicate and release information. Activists, journalists, whistleblowers, they're all hard to find. They use, some mainstream like Facebook and other things around the dark web. Now, to everybody's chagrin, this is about stuff, your personal data. How often do you change your passwords on your accounts? Do you have MFA? Do you have text codes enabled on your bank accounts? A lot of banks anymore are requiring it. I know that my bank basically forces a two-factor authentication when I log in now, which I greatly appreciate because I did not have that option before. Credit card companies, if you've got a compromised account, let them know, or at the bank. You can also, freeze your credit, which is not necessarily the best thing, but if you're in a situation where you have confirmed that you've had your identity stolen, that is about the best thing that you can do. Most of the credit monitoring agencies will allow you to freeze your credit. Driver's licenses, Social Security numbers, passports. I mean, if you feel like you're a victim of identity theft, you need to, basically contact the Social Security Administration. Everybody that you have cards with, whether it's passport or otherwise, driver's licenses. So from there, email, contact, Gmail is a little difficult, but if you find your hacked account is been hacked, you should have a recovery account added to your Gmail account. Yahoo, they all give you the option to have a recovery account. And now the thing is you need to pay attention to your email, and if you get an email saying, oh, we've noticed that you changed your password or whatever, that's the first sign that if you didn't change your password, that you need to get it recovered and quickly. Let's see. And questions on like Facebook and stuff like that we'll get into here in a second. So enabling multi-factor authentication on all accounts. Facebook has the ability to do that, monitor your credit. Most of your common credit cards now offer dark web stuff for personal, monitoring and things like that, I highly suggest taking and setting that up if you don't already have it set up. Using different passwords for every account. Like I said, there's password managers out there. Changing them every 30 to 90 days is a general best practice. I have a tendency, if I'm using different passwords, to not change them quite as often, just because of the fact that I'm using different passwords, and if a site is breached, it's not necessarily an issue per se. But the best thing you can do is make a plan. Make and keep a plan if you find your data is compromised. Write it out ahead of time. Who do you need to call? What do I need to do? And this is not just about personal information. This is about business as well, because anymore the liabilities that small businesses and medium-sized businesses take on from a cybersecurity standpoint, it is critical that you have a plan, because most of us, if we didn't have a plan and you could not recover, you're going to be out of business in 6 months or less. And those are hard facts that are available all over the place. So I'm not going to kind of reiterate some of this stuff, but now ransomware and malware. This is a hot topic lately because everybody's getting, it's in the news. Hospitals have had ransomware, malware come in and encrypt their files, cities, etc. Now, some of the easiest ways to attract some of this stuff is phishing. There's also a technique called social engineering, rogue actors and devices. I will kind of give you, unfortunately, I cannot do a live demo in this environment but I do have a recording of one that I worked with Danny Jenkins on a few weeks ago. But so phishing is one of the primary things right now where people are susceptible to clicking on things that they shouldn't be. In bare terms, phishing is a fraudulent practice of sending emails, crooks, criminals, hackers, purporting to be from reputable companies in order to induce individuals to reveal their personal information. It could be little things like passwords. It could be your birth dates. It could be, anything that identifies you as a person. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, that particular individual piece of information is the whole piece to the puzzle, but these people are persistent and they do continue to piece the information together. So this is kind of an example of a phishing email. This came from Jamison Pearl Berg at yahoo.com. And this is just coming in, most of this is blanked out because of, protecting the innocent. This is a resume that's in a zip file, saying, hello, my name is, my resume is in a PDF file. Well, what happens here is this zip file potentially contains a malicious payload because the mail gateways don't scan, in a lot of cases, zip files. So you open it up, Windows 7, Windows 10, they all open up the zip files. You go in, you look at that file, and it potentially has a malicious payload in it. If you aren't expecting this from this particular person, my best advice is to avoid it. Delete it. Here is kind of another example from a little while back. This is from, it looks legit from the aspect that it's coming from Amazon. It looks like it's, the problem that you have is if you look at the email address, it's missing the A from AmazonCanada.ca. So if you just glance at it quickly and don't pay attention, you're going to be clicking on links that are probably malicious. Again, this is just another way to get through firewalls, get through the spam filters, and get to your desktop and inbox. This is all in the slides, by the way, so I mean, we're not, trying to, we want this to be an education, so look at it, review it, and if there's questions, we can, always set up a consultation later on. Same thing with this one. This is just another kind of example. It kind of points out the things that we're talking about that need to be, looked at in an email. This is a generic greeting. There's some things in here misspelled. It's a zip file. But PDFs, Word documents, they can all be, weaponized as a malware device. Phishing emails, the best thing you can do is educate yourself on what to look for. Previous examples that we had are a good starting point. I will tell you, implement a training program and make people stick to it. It's not a one and done and forget it, because threats consistently change. If you've got an IT partner today already, work with them to see what they can help you with. Ideally, you'd want to see true phishing emails sent out and test how your employees respond to it. Do they open it up? And a true training program will tell you whether they've been opened, and then basically, if they have been opened, it'll take them into a training exercise video and stuff like that. Basic questions to ask yourself. Question the content of the email. Is it something that you're looking for? Is it truly legitimate? Are you expecting the email from one of your contacts with potentially things in it that are attachments that you're not expecting? If you're not expecting it, call the sender. It's as simple as that. I mean, pick up the phone and take 2 seconds to make a phone call and protect yourself. Social engineering is a non-technical strategy cyber attackers used, and it is heavily based on human interaction. It often involves, befriending people or talking to people saying, "Oh, I'm from IT support," or this and that, and they start remote sessions, with the individual, and they have basically at that point, the individual that they're talking to with inside the company has just given them basically carte blanche access to their machine and allows them to pretty much do whatever they want. They can install malware, they can do keyloggers, they can do pretty much anything. It's legitimate access to confidential information that you probably do not want out in the wild. And the thing that you have to think about is, what is it that information that they have access to that could be detrimental to your business? Is it, your customer list? Is it your social, your HR files, your employee files that has social security numbers, payroll, birth dates, and things like that? So it depends on the individuals that they social engineer with, but it is true, it does happen, and we have done testing with social engineering to see how far we can get into an organization, and I can tell you that the reports that go back can scare you. Rogue actors. Rogue actors are anybody that, I'm not saying your employees are rogue, but at the same time, it's opening and executing attachments from emails. And then the demo that's coming up, you'll see how easy just launching an email, it looks like an invoice or something, an Excel invoice, can basically transfer email out, potentially encrypt your machine, etc. Installing software from unknown sources and websites, if it's not reputable, most of the software sites that I've seen, like File Hippo and stuff like that, they include payloads to install adware, malware, and things like that. Always look to go back to the manufacturer site, such as, if you're looking for Acrobat Reader, go to acrobat.com and look it up. Typically it's not hard to find. You may take a little looking at, but look for the stuff from the genuine sites. US rubber duckies. These are devices, and I can't find mine on my desk right now, but it's basically nothing more than, oh, here it is. So a US rubber ducky is literally a USB drive that looks like a regular USB drive. You plug it in, and it contains, or it can contain, malicious payloads, which everybody thinks, well, it's just a USB drive, plug it in, see what's on it. No, that's not a good idea. And here is why. These are just some of the free payloads out there that are available. All you got to do is do a search on rubber ducky free payloads, and you're going to get a whole list of stuff. As you can see, OS X, this affects Mac OS as well as it does Windows and everything else. You know, Mac OS, I can go out and grab your iMessage captures. I can change your password to blank. I can basically give you myself a root backdoor into your Apple. You know, there's remotely possible. There is a batch wiper drive eraser, which you plug it in. Guess what it's going to do? It's going to wipe out the hard drive on your machine and any data that you have on it. Some of the, you know, more funny ones are like, you know, Windows screen rotation hack, you know, PowerShell wget plus execute. But this particular payload in general can be reverse engineered to basically send data off-site. I'm not going to concentrate on this too much more, but if you're interested to see what's freely available between Amazon and this, it doesn't take much. It's basically a $50 pack and can have most of anybody's information if you so choose. So, Ryan, if you're ready to, you know, do the video demo of basically a system having files transferred out, I would greatly appreciate it.
Good evening, everybody. This is a quick video I wanted to make to demonstrate the importance of policy-driven controls and zero trust approach to application security, such as application whitelisting and ring fencing. What I'd like to do is just show you 3 different pieces of malware. I have 2 computers here, a VM running a corporate antivirus. I'm not going to go into which corporate antivirus, but it is a paid antivirus. It is very, very popular. And it really doesn't matter because I've tried this with 9 or 10 different antiviruses, and most of these pieces of malware bypass all of them. I have a second server, which is basically an AWS server sitting in the cloud. They're not on the same network. There's no link to them. This server is accepting HTTPS connections to receive data. I've got 3 pieces of malware here. They all work in different ways. And the first one I'll start with is a traditional EXE virus. But it disguises itself with an Excel icon. So if someone was to swap out a document, it'd be very easy for you to run it without knowing. When you open this file, it appears as though nothing happens. In the background, though, the file sits on the computer and it sits there idle for 30 seconds. The reason for that is to bypass the typical sandboxing checks. And in about 30 seconds, it's going to start to upload data to my server here. So we'll give it 30 seconds. And we can start seeing all of the files that from my file server have been copied to this remote host. This shows how easy it is for an attacker to convince you to open something and just steal your data without you even being aware of it. I'm going to delete these files now. I'm going to show you the next demonstration. The next type of virus I've got is actually using a macro in a Word document. So when you open the document, it will tell you, it may or may not tell you, do you want to enable macros? In this case, it's not going to. And the reason is I signed this macro using just a quick search. I signed up online. I set up a Yelp page for a business name and a website, and got one of the digital certificate companies to issue me a code signing cert. And I was able to sign the macro so it didn't give me the normal security prompts. This is getting more and more common, especially in the US. You do have to jump through a few hoops, but if you sign by a Chinese company or a Russian company, you might have to jump through a lot less hoops. You can see again, just by opening that document, it was able to upload all of my data onto this remote server. And the third and final test isn't even going to use a macro. This one's, or download any kind of malware on my machine. What this one's going to do is when I open it, it's going to call a PowerShell command. And that PowerShell command is actually going to go off and copy a file. So I'm going to delete all the files off my server again. And it's only going to copy one file, this one, because I just did it very quickly, so I didn't want to take too long from my file share. So if I click on this link in a document, I don't need a macro. It simply just copies a file from my file server. I think it's an 8K file, so it's going to be this one here, I guess, and just dumps it onto this stolen host. This really isn't to scare you. It really is just to show you how threat detection technologies are looking for bad patterns based on things they've seen before. None of these pieces of malware are particularly genius. They took at most an hour and a half, 2 hours to put together. And I was able to create files and create samples that were able to copy data. And as a business, you have to realize that I don't need to be an administrator to get this data. I didn't elevate in any way. I just ran these viruses under a normal user account. And anything that user has access to essentially is fair game for that program to copy and steal. So it really is important that you control what are running on your business computers and what those applications can do. Most people only use 5-10 applications. So it's really strange that as businesses, we still allow our operating systems to run whatever the user clicks on, potentially exposing ourselves to data theft, ransomware, or other types of encryption. It really is worth looking at things like threat lock, or even if it's not threat locker, but some kind of application whitelisting and ring fencing tools. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this.
Okay, there we go. Any questions? I guess I'm just about to get into the last piece of this. Best practices, avoiding data breach. I didn't catch that one. And avoiding data breach and stolen personal data is possible. And how we get around some of this, you identify what needs protection, what will put you out of business if it falls into the wrong hands. I mean, these are just some simple things to think about. You know, identifying your personal data, your company data, whatever the case may be. What needs protection? What will put you out of business if it falls in the wrong hands? That's where you need to identify and work through a list. Next thing is protect your critical data and items identified above. That can be via encryption. You know, there's multiple ways to protect data, and it comes down to each use case is different, and that's where, you know, consulting with somebody that knows and can handle this information, and, you know, working within the confines of your business and how to make it easy but not, you know, overly cumbersome to basically lock that information down. There's a lot of different ways to handle it, so that's one of the reasons I don't get into, you know, how to protect that data, because there's a lot of different use cases and it's going to change from one business to the next. So consult with your IT provider, us, whatever the case may be. Like I said, if you've got concerns, they are legitimate. As you can see just in the last video, it's easy for data to walk out the door and you not even understand or know that it left. Detect. How do you detect if your data has been compromised? This is a tough one, and on average, the average time to detect when something's been compromised in your environment is around 160 days. In that time frame, you became somebody's, you know, basically spamming, you know, they will leverage the environment that you have to conduct additional attacks. And, you know, it's proven, Brown-Forman, you know, acknowledged earlier in this year that they had been compromised, and how long it's been since it was actually occurred versus the when it was detected. So it does take a detection plan. It does take thought about how to do that. I can tell you that there are tools that, you know, we deploy that help with this. There's also things that are available from other companies. You know, it just comes down to what are your needs and what's the best approach to handling the detection without, you know, small businesses have unique needs, and I get that. So that's the reason everything that's put out there is customized, and we take into account what's needed from the small business standpoint. Responding to a data breach. There are laws that are becoming more and more prevalent about how you must respond to a data breach, who you must notify, when you must notify them, and what the data was that was lost. Kentucky is not, I don't believe, at that point, but a lot of states are becoming more and more hands-on with enforcing data breach notifications. So states like California and several others have laws on the books that if you have been breached, you literally have to send out notices and ensure positive contact with all the clients that you had that you lost the data for. There's, and in my opinion, it won't be long before Kentucky and Indiana and everybody else has similar laws. So document how you're going to respond, in what cases. It's going to vary, and what it's going to do to take you to get back up and running in case of malware and things like that. Recovering, there's multiple different scenario plans depending on depending on the types of breach and how long it's going to take you to recover. If you run across a ransomware utility and you don't have backups, basically I can tell you that that's not a plan. That's paying the ransom is never a plan. It is much cheaper usually to have a plan up front where you're cognizant of what is going on and you've got an offsite backup, or you have a backup on a NAS that is not part of your network and things like that. We can kind of I'll get into that in a little bit. So password generators, this is just some stuff to help you generate some passwords. These are free sites. It doesn't cost anything. It's one of the reasons that I put this in here. There are other sites that will generate passwords for you that also, they cost money, and they're typically a subscription based. So however you track passwords, this will help you generate it. There's lots of tools out there that will also, track it for you as well. Password checkers, these will help you determine how secure your password is. So if you want to just generate a password and see how secure it is, go to this link, type it in, or some slight variation of it. If you don't feel comfortable, which in most cases I wouldn't, I put change a couple letters or numbers to see what it tells you and how secure it is. Have I been pawned? PWNED is a geek speak, for being pawned. This will keep an online database of passwords that have been exposed on the dark web, and you can see if your passwords have shown up in it. I can tell you that it is fairly accurate, but don't put a lot of faith in it. It just helps you narrow down and get rid of potential passwords that have been breached elsewhere. Chrome actually has a nice built-in password check. If you go under settings, autofill and passwords, it will check your passwords to see if they've been exposed and or part of a breach. You have to save them in the browser in order for that to happen, which some people do, some people don't. But if they're saved, it's going to tell you which ones have been breached and that you should definitely look at changing it. It's one of the easiest tools to know whether your passwords have been in a breach somewhere as well. So, being in the know, identify what information of yours is freely available, including stolen passwords, personally identifiable information. Credit card companies are the primary free source for that. And it looks like I'm running a little bit behind. So monitoring information publicly available about your company accounts is harder, but it is available. And I can help with some of that. Just towards the end, I'll work on getting you guys a free scan and tell you what's out there in regards to your organization. This is some of my information that I'm using. It's not part of the handouts, but I wanted to show you that it does happen, even to the best of us. And it's not my fault, but it's different websites. This came from Apollo.io, which is an information site. This is my email address. It's that's a password that I no longer use, but it's not disclosed as to where it came from. Again, my password, which is masked, and where it came from if it's available. Same thing. These are all valid, and I will tell you that they are valid. The PII hit, this is name, address information, your home address, whatever it may be, but it's personally identifiable information that can help hackers steal your data and take over your identity. Backups. If you don't have backups, I highly recommend them. They'll save your butt. Automate your backups. Review it on a periodic basis. I suggest quarterly. Back up to another device that does not integrate with your network security, and do not use the same password for other things that to access that device. And test the recoverability frequently as well. There's a lot of people that just set backups up and they move on and they forget about it. Test them, see what you can restore, and make sure your stuff is workable. Just as a sideline, I do have a book that's coming out on November 19th regarding Are You on Thin Ice? It's a co-authored book with a few of the other people that I've worked with in my ventures. If you buy a copy on release day, I'll kick in also a bunch of other stuff. The ongoing cyber tips, you sign up. We don't bombard you. It's once a week with weekly information on different things. It's all typically very good information, and we don't, hound you with it. We don't resell marketing lists or anything else like that. So don't worry about those kind of things. You can always opt out if you want to. So questions and answers?
All right. Hey, Dean, that was awesome. We do have some questions, but first, I'd like to ask a quick question. I really thank you for all that. That's kind of some scary stuff, and I realize now that I really got some work to do right away. But you were mentioning the password checker on Chrome, and a lot of times I use Chrome just to store the password, but I also have some antivirus software that also stores passwords as well. Do they kind of conflict? Like if I store in two places?
Well, I will tell you that it's not so much a confliction, but you can get them out of sync, so you never know which ones are the correct ones. I mean, it's one of those that's a catch-22. Personally, I will tell you that I don't use both. I use a password management tool it's just better because I can randomly generate passwords, and it doesn't necessarily, it's not tied to Chrome. Not saying that if you set up Chrome properly with encryption and the data store and sync it, that somebody's going to steal it, because I've not had that happen personally. I have not heard of anything in the wild at this point that can decrypt it if you use a long enough password to encrypt your sync. So personally, I would, if you want to save passwords, use the encryption keys within Chrome and save them in Chrome.
Okay. Do you have any recommendations for good password generators?
We use a product called MyGlue, but that's more of a, we use that for more documentation and password sharing between our clients. LastPass is a good free one. OnePass, I think, is another one. Those are annual subscriptions, and I've had good luck with any of those. So there's some free stuff out there as well. NePass, those are things that if people are interested, I can put the links out there and later on. So.
Okay. So we do have some questions. I'm going to ask this kind of. Well, Tony, are you there? You got some questions for us?
I am.
All right.
So the first question I have is from Jennifer. She'd actually like your opinion on how safe info is kept on Google Drive.
It's one of those. I really love these questions. Here's the thing with Google Drive, as well as Dropbox and various other public storage environments. It's free. I can tell you that basically when you sign up for it, and like G Suite's a little bit different depending on what you're talking about. I mean, if it's G Suite and you've got some sort of agreement in place, but that information is as safe as basically if you lose your password. I mean, if you lose your password, somebody hacks your account, that information can walk out the door just as fast as coming off of a server or something like that. So the flip side of it is they have your password. They don't need access to your machine. They just need access to your Google account. They can download everything in a zip file in about depending on what you have, in a few seconds. So a few seconds to a couple minutes, and all the information on your Google Drive is gone as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. So that just you touched on this earlier, but so if you're doing automatic backups, would you back up to the cloud, or what exactly would you do?
if there's multiple options out there today, you can, if you're overly concerned about having stuff in the cloud, you can basically back up to a small NAS environment, that you have at home or whatever. They're relatively inexpensive. Most people will back up to USB drives and stuff like that, which is good. But the kicker is you need to make sure that it's unplugged. You don't leave it plugged in. You don't, you have to do a backup once a week. Because what happens is if you do click on something with ransomware in it or something like that, and the USB drive is attached to the machine, the backups are going to become encrypted as well. So therefore, there goes your backups. Okay. So there's tools out there to back up to the cloud as well as to local devices on your home network. And as long as you're keeping the separation of security, different passwords, different devices, and how to map stuff, you're typically a little safer. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Tony?
So this question comes from Anne. She says, what is your recommendation on liability limits for a small business under 1 million in sales for a specific cybersecurity policy?
Recommendations on limits, depending on how big you are, under $1 million in sales, I'm assuming that's, what kind of products are you dealing with? What kind of exposure do you have? The products themselves can be part of that whole exposure. How are you collecting payment information? What information are you storing from your customers and things like that? It could, as little as $50,000 to $100,000 may be sufficient, because part of that is also to help you get back on your feet if you are breached. Now, one of the things that I will tell you about cybersecurity policies is that most of them have explicit clauses in them that you are following best practices, your machines are patched and current and up to date, and if you are not, and they find that you are not, the claim will be denied, and there's nothing you can do about it. So if it's something that you want to look at and putting in place, you also need to make sure that you have a process in place to keep everything current, including your AV, patches on your PCs, servers, and whatever else you've got, in your environment. Mm-hmm. Because that's where they're going to hang you out to dry, is they're going to come in. If you file a claim, they're going to come in and look at your stuff, and if you're not compliant, up to date, and current, you're basically not within their coverage in most cases.
So it's I've always been under the impression that these guys, criminals, generally target larger business, but that's not entirely true, is it?
No, and one of the reasons it's not true anymore is because smaller businesses are a much easier target. Everybody thinks that it's not going to happen to me. I take all the extra precautions, but you are just as much of a prime target. I've recently went into a smaller office, and there was a group of about 5 people, and as in my book, I kind of explained it a little bit. I walked in, they had basically people's social security numbers, addresses, phone numbers, all in plain text and PDFs. And guess what? That's a smorgasbord of information that somebody can use to steal identities, and it is what it is. And so they really had to think about what to do and how to change their practices. Otherwise, they are in a major hurt if they were to get breached, because there's nothing, that business would go out of business because of that.
Right. Wow. Tony, got another question?
I sure do. Kirsten actually has a question in regards to when you all were talking about saving things in the cloud. She says, are there cloud backup programs that you would recommend?
Yes, there are, and it really depends on, most of these things like Office 365, and this is one of the little things that most people don't know about Office 365, and this is going to be things that I would suggest reaching out to me, to look at the, to basically look at the environment and to give you a better recommendation. But, like Office 365 in general, the stipulation with Microsoft is there are no backups. What they consider an in-state backup is if a data center fails, they're going to bring your stuff up in another data center as it was when that other data center failed. So if you have somebody, open up a piece of email, goes through and deletes your mailbox, deletes a bunch of stuff out of your email, you don't have another solution for backup, then you're kind of SOL. Microsoft may try to help you, but their typical response is that's not normal. They don't do it. It's not part of their service. So there's things out there that you can look up at backing up your PCs, such as, but it's one of those things, what's on the machine, what are the applications. So there's Shadow Protect, there's various other companies that I can't think of a couple of them off the top of my head, but there are companies out there that will back up your machine, but that is, if files open, it's not going to get backed up, things like that. So it comes down to the situation.
So personally, Dean, would you do this type of backup, cloud backup, or something other solution just for your personal laptop?
Yep, I back up my laptop. I take it home. I'm actually backing up my laptop to a NAS since I have a couple terabytes worth of data on my laptop. But I back it up to a NAS because it's a one-time purchase and the drives are mirrored and stuff like that. I mean, there's also Acronis is one of the things I was thinking about. Acronis True Image actually will back up your laptop to the cloud. It runs and it backs it up. So there's lots of little things out there. But the answer is yes, I back my laptop up because if I lose it, something happens to it, I need what's on it.
Okay. So just quickly, tell us what a NAS is. Explain that to us.
A NAS is a network attached storage device. It usually has the smallest ones have typically 2 hard drives in them that you're used to, the bigger hard drives you're used to seeing in your older PCs and things like that. But they're much larger drives to this date. I mean, I have what is basically an 8 terabyte drive, which is the equivalent of, I don't know how many thousands of pages of documentations that I can, but they're fairly large. The nice part about it is if you buy something that's meant to last, they will hold up and they're serviceable for anywhere from 4 to 5 years. And then nice part is that you got a drive that fails, you don't lose everything on your backup, so you can replace the drive and move on.
Mm-hmm.
So,
thank you. Good information. Tony, you got a question?
Yeah, I actually have a few more. Joan wants to know, how safe is Norton?
My take on most commercial AAV products, I will tell you, I don't put a lot of faith in them. And the reason being is zero-day viruses and stuff that you hear about on the news. Norton, McAfee, Windows Defender, even the built-in stuff, does not have, it looks for patterns. And that's the one thing about AV is it's looking for something that is known today already. And that is where if you got somebody that introduces a new virus into the wild, it's not going to pick it up, and it may take 2 or 3 days for the vendors to get on board. And in that time, you're susceptible, and no AV is going to potentially stop it. So that's where being cautious and understanding what it is. I've got tools that we put out as part of our security program that basically that video kind of demonstrated, but it will stop those kind of things. So if it's a zero-day virus, it will basically stop any of those transfers and things like that from occurring. So it's designed for zero-day unknown applications. It looks at what it's doing and it just blocks it. So,
thank you, Tony.
So my next question comes from Catherine. She says, since data is continuously under attack, when do you believe it will be common not to use social security numbers and etc. And transition to biometrics and at least 2 multi-factors being mandated, not simply being recommended?
That is a cultural issue that this country is going to face. Social security numbers have been used as an identifying source for I don't know how many years now, even though it was legislated not to be. It's just not going to go away overnight. I wish that I could say that it would, but I don't know that I'll see it in our lifetime. There are people that are also deathly afraid of biometrics and multi-factor authentication because, I've watched videos, it's been tested where people can be implanted with a chip, and those are just all societal issues that, you're going to have some people that are okay with it, some people that aren't, and I wish I had a good answer for that, but biometrics are coming. It's pretty much standard anymore. Your phones have it, your tablets have it, laptops have it. Multiple factors, I can't say, but Social Security numbers, I'm afraid, are probably going to be around for a lot longer than what we want. On the flip side of it, there's also the legal side where people can, from the legal system side, I don't know if anybody's read any of this, but they can use your fingerprints and stuff like that to unlock your phones. That's perfectly legal. Although if you use a PIN on your phone, they can't force you to give them that PIN. They can force you to give them a fingerprint, but they can't force you to give up a PIN. So it's we have a lot of issues surrounding that, and I don't have a really good answer, but I don't think it's going to be anytime soon.
So Dean, what you just talked about on the two-factor authentication, is there ways to do that with your personal machines now? Yep.
Google has the ability to force a two-factor authentication. You can set up two-factor authentication on your Google accounts. Yahoo, I believe, also has it. And it's not hard just to go search on, multi-factor setup, and Google, Google has an authenticator app. They can also use your phone as an authentication device with text messages and whatnot. Office 365, it's built in. You just have to download the Microsoft Authenticator app, turn it on, and go from there. On-premise Exchange is not there because Microsoft is trying to get people off of on-premise Exchange, but it's also considerably less expensive usually by moving into 365. So,
thank you. Good to know. Tony?
One last question. This comes from Lisa. She says, how do we safeguard our older parents' Facebook account?
Well, that's a tough one. Depending on how tech savvy your grandparents are, or your parents, there is a app that's built into the Facebook app on cell phones. My dad is 70. I can tell you that he uses an iPhone, and he's not on Facebook, but there's an app, there's a password generator, code generator that's in the app for the Facebook app that will allow you to dual factor, authenticate your Facebook account. That is probably the best way to do it at this point. And, because typically in most cases, if it's set up, all they got to do is hit OK. Yes, it's an own login, and go from there. That's what it comes down to at this point. That Facebook doesn't really have anything other than that besides text messaging. So I don't know what the level of tech savvy we're talking about, but those are some of the things you can look at.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to let you know, Dean, that Kimberly says, great job, Dean, but this is scary stuff.
It is scary stuff, and I didn't even get into the really scary stuff. That would be more presentable in a live environment where I could take somebody's cell phone and pull their data off. But it is real, and like I said, this is not meant to scare anybody. It's to get you thinking about what your security plans are, how to deal with them, and to how to protect yourself and not have your stuff floating all over the internet. So from there, like I said, if you follow the links on the second last page, you can sign up, and I will work on getting dark web scans out to people that are on, and I will tell you that I will not deliver them over email because of the potential information that's in it, but we will work out something to get the information to you. So
thank you. Well, this has been awesome. I mean, I've made a ton of notes myself, and I've got a lot of work to do as well, especially on passwords. So,
yeah, don't use your kids' names, don't use their birthdays, don't use your wife's name, birthdays, and stuff like that. Yeah. Use your favorite movies or something like that, books. So.
Yeah. So I guess that's one quick question. So I've read a little bit about where when you use the longer passwords, you should use phrases or things like that that you can remember? What's just a quick tip to put together a long?
Well, it's something, like I've had people ask that question before, and a lot of it is something that's meaningful to you. Say a favorite book or something like that. It comes down to like the snowy day. I mean, this is one of the ones that I came up with a while back. The snowy days, winter. It's basically kind of a phrase, first sentence from a book or something like that. And basically, you can take the first letter from each one of the sentences or out of the words, and use it to create a password or something like that. So if you got an opening passage in a book that you like, well, take the first sentence and pull the first characters off of each word, and it generates a totally random password. And somebody would really have to know a little bit more about you than just your kids' names and stuff like that. I mean, it means something to you, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything to anybody else. Right.
Good tip. Dean, thank you so much. This has been great, and this is super important stuff. We are all at risk, and I feel a little bit better prepared, not prepared, but better sort of prepared. So Thank you again.
All
Tony,
right.
got anything you want to add?
Oh, yes. I just wanted to say, Dean, this was awesome. Thank you for your sharing your wisdom with us. We appreciate that. Yeah. And I do want you to know that to our listeners that there will be a replay sent to your email, and Dean's information is included in the slides, so you will be able to get access to his contact information.
Yeah, that goes out about 4 o'clock today. And and then I guess that's about all the questions, and we'll kind of wrap it up. Dean, I want to thank you so much for doing this for us. It's been great. Tony, thank you as well.
And look forward to potentially doing a refresher, sometime a little later on, because people do forget. So
we'll schedule that.
All right.
Thanks everybody out there for joining us today. And as you join us every week. Next week, we're going back to marketing. We're going to have Randy Blevins from Think Tank Marketing, who's got some pretty cool things to talk about and getting ready for the upcoming year and the holiday season in marketing. So please join us next week at noon as always. And we'll say goodbye. And thank you, Dean. Thank you, Tony. Goodbye, everybody. Have a good day today.
Thank you. And goodbye.
Bye.